Hi there. Thank you for listening to Grounded in Maine today. My name is Amy, and my guest today is Talor Stewart, who is an architect, and he has written a #1 best-selling book called Conscious Home Design, and has a business by the same name. This is available for instant download. Talor is also, he will train people also. You have a course?
Certification.
Certification, yes. Talor, I will let you tell us all about that, but thank you so much for being here. I'm excited to learn about this because conscious home design sounds like, it sounds very sustainable, but it also sounds very comfortable.
Cool, Amy. Thanks for inviting me onto your podcast. Yeah, conscious home design. I think the same thing happens for most people. They think, oh, conscious home design, that sounds interesting, but then when they think about it for 2 more seconds, they're like, but what actually is that? What does that mean? It's like an interesting keyword, but what does it actually look like? And so I think a lot of people, they default to, does that mean, it's like alternative style or alternative building materials or some sort of eco-friendly, energy efficient kind of thing? Or they think maybe it's like feng shui and some sort of space clearing, energy flow kind of, system. And the truth is that it's not either of those things. It can be any of those things if someone wants that. But conscious home design, it doesn't require it. It works with any style. So if you have a modern home or a traditional home or a home built out of stone or concrete or wood or whatever, or straw bale or any, it doesn't matter what you build the home out of, or where in the world, or even how big or small it is. It's just the methodology is about understanding who you are as a person and what your best life looks like. And that means the things that are meaningful to you and personal to you and the way you like to do, the way you show up, the activities and the things that you enjoy, the things that you do that are an expression of you and the things that you do that feed you and help you. We all are, evolving and growing and expanding and creating a new version of ourselves, hopefully, stretching into just a little bit more of our potential or our possibility, as time goes on. Mm-hmm. And so the more we know about who you are and the person and the life you want to create for yourself, the more we can start to shape the space to support those goals and activities. So conscious home design is a deep dive into you as a person, as an individual. And then we shape it around that. So what that might be, super energy efficient, off-grid straw bale, but it might be very conventional, downtown of all completely traditional materials and very, very mainstream. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a great icebreaker to, it sort of opens up a thought process. So you say conscious home design, that sounds really cool. And then as you're saying it or as you're thinking about it, you're like, what does that mean to me? And then,
Sure.
So it can mean like you're saying, it's whatever works for you and,
Right.
with who you are. And so I'm sure, it would be different for everyone. And we were just talking about me wanting to be on a farm and I need to have animals and I need, a little bit of space for my chickens and blah, blah, blah. But it could also be, as you were saying, it could be right in the heart of the city where you don't need like a vehicle and you have all the amenities close by, I would think, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Sure. Absolutely. Of course. Yeah.
Or anything in between.
What's that?
Or anything in between.
Or anything in between, right? Cottage or castle, It works with any style or any size or any location in the world. And so, when I always knew I was going to write a book, even back in my college days, I was like, oh, I know I'm here. I know I have a different way of seeing things. I know there's a huge gap in the marketplace. People aren't doing what I'm naturally drawn to. I look because I am. I'm in school. They're teaching me what's out there, and I'm looking at that and I'm saying, but this doesn't exist. And And I'm asking my professors, I'm picking their brains, and they're like, we can't help you. We don't know anything about that.
There's
And
not
I was
anything
like, okay.
already set up. Yeah.
So I knew that I would be writing a book at some point. I just didn't think it was going to take me 20 years to get it, out of my desk, off my desk, out of my head and off my desk and into the marketplace so that people could start to benefit from the knowledge. But it really just took me that long to clarify the message. It took a lot of practice and experience and trial and error and living through things to say, oh, okay, now I know. This is the stuff that really matters. Like I didn't want to write another book about style or another book about, sort of green design. And originally I was thinking about it. My working title had been Green Picket Fence. Living the new American dream in a custom designed eco-friendly home, sort of like a evolution of the white picket fence.
Yeah.
But as I was researching the book, researching the things that I wanted to put into the book, I realized that there's a lot of people who are masters at eco design. There's a lot of people out there that are focused in that niche, and I didn't really feel like I had a lot more to add to it. I mean, there's room. There's always, think about how many cookbooks there are. There's always room to write one more cookbook. There's always room to write one more green design book. But it actually just wasn't my core message. My core message was bigger than that. I didn't want to limit myself to only people who are interested in eco design.
Yes.
Because the truth is, very few people will hire an architect in their life. Most people do the best they can with the walls they have. And of the people that hire an architect, and we're talking less than 5% of the population will hire an architect. Of that, maybe only 5% will hire an architect because they want some green thing. It's just a tiny little micro niche community. And conscious home design is universally applicable. Like, I didn't want to just build a book around style, like preferences. Oh, I like red. Oh, I like green. I wanted to, I like modern. Oh, I like the old rustic, or classical, or I like a rustic, something in between, the classic, I didn't want to get bogged down with those preferences, those little niches. I was looking for stuff that was universally applicable to all human beings. And so conscious home design really evolved from this desire to help people, regardless of the style and the shape. So, I mean, it's assumed if you hire an architect that you're going to get the style you want. That's a given, But if I just gave you this beautiful, amazing, like magazine quality, house, but it didn't actually fit or flow for who you are and the way you want to live there, like, what's the point, right? It's like, it may look cool, it will give you that wow moment, but your day-to-day living is going to be chaotic, or awkward, right? And it's going to be friction. Like, you could buy the very best, pair of shoes by the fanciest, by your favorite designer, but if they're 3 sizes too big or too small, then, not enjoyable.
Yes.
And so conscious home design is about looking at the things that all human beings need, just as a fundamental need. Hey, we all obviously need, shelter, but beyond shelter, we, once you've achieved basic shelter and your sort of security is established, you can now move on to developing your higher needs, according to, Maslow, the hierarchy of human needs pyramid. Needs for love and belonging and connection, needs for personal development and self-growth, needs for creative expression, all sorts of stuff that, that housing kind of leaves up to chance. If you just look at raw, housing stock, it's like, sure, bedroom, bathroom, kitchen,
right,
and a hangout room. And that's kind of like the basic program of the house. But you can live there. It's difficult to thrive. in a place like that. You really need to bring some intentionality into to develop your full self, to be a very rich, well-rounded personality. You need more than just, shelter and a place to hang out. You need a little bit more than that. So conscious home design starts by asking those good questions. The quality of your question determines the quality of your results.
Yeah. And that sounds like, that doesn't sound like something that you're going to really have already prepared in your 20s. Like, that sounds like something that life experience will give you, right? You didn't have that planned in your 20s. You just knew you were going to have a book.
Seth Godin said it takes 10,000 hours to achieve, mastery in a subject. Obviously, if that subject is brain surgery or, rocket science, it takes more than that, but if it's something like accounting, probably a little less than that. It's like, depending on the complexity of the subject, more or less. But 10,000 hours is a nice rule of thumb, at least to say, hey, you've got expert level status, expert level knowledge compared to all other humans on Earth.
Right.
So this makes sense to us, right? We all know, hey, practice makes perfect. It takes time and effort to, accomplish anything.
Right. Well, and if you think that humans are very complex, it's not like cookie cutter, like brain surgery or
right.
There's not a textbook for it to teach you.
No, life is a process of discovery for sure. Yeah. Like we touched on before, we're always creating ourselves new. We are evolving, we're growing, we're expanding. Some parts of us stay the same. We have our core personality, but the depth and the breadth and the clarity with which that starts to manifest and shows up. You've been in more than one relationship in your life, and you see how you evolve and how your ability to connect with another person, communicate with another person evolves. It's a lot different than when you're 20.
Right.
The way you communicate as a 30-year-old is a lot different than a 20-year-old, is a lot different than a 10-year-old, is a lot different than a 40. Every decade it's like, wow, I'm so much broader and deeper. It's so you still have your core personality, but it ripens.
Mm-hmm. That's a great word for it.
So conscious home design is looks to the universal things that we all need. Okay, look, you have a need for creative expression. All humans do. We're all inherently creative in some way. Even the people who say, "Oh, I'm not creative," of course you are. You just haven't been practicing it recently or lately. Or
you haven't found the right outlet.
It's inherent. Yeah. So we all have our certain human needs, and so it's just about asking someone. 20-year-olds I don't have any 20-year-old clients. 20-year-olds aren't coming to me and saying, hey, I'm ready to build my forever home. For starters, most 20-year-olds don't have any money.
Hey, 50-year-olds aren't doing so great either.
But for number two, they're really still adventuring and traveling and looking, they're exploring, they're traveling the world, they're trying different jobs, they're trying different locations, they know what they, most by and large. And so not really ready to settle down at all. By the time they are, there's two real major changes in people's lives. And I'm talking about, people with children here, and those are sort of the growing families. And so people that are in their 30s, their income is growing, their equity is growing, their family is growing. Maybe there's another child on the way, or the kids are getting older, and they no longer want to be in the bedroom right next to you, so they wake up in the middle of maybe you want some separation so they can play their music, or the way people live is different. So I call it the growing family home or the expansion home. So people in their 30s and 40s, that's one demographic that I can help a lot. And then there's the empty nesters, the downsizing. They want to downsize but not downgrade. So these are people that are in their 50s, late 50s and 60s, that are saying, why do we need all these bedrooms? It's just you, me, and the dog. So those are two sort of major life changes where people are looking for an architect. That said, the knowledge in the book and that I can share with people, even if you're living in a rental apartment somewhere, can really help. So you don't have to have this, I'm going to build a new home to be, sort of position in life to get value from the work that I do. And that really is the whole point of the book, is to connect that, that knowledge with everyone. Anyone who wants to. I think we all know about the mind-body connection, in this day and age. Anyone who's even slightly digging into an aware life, a mindful life. But the mind-body environment connection is also real, but even less understood. And so my job as the architect is to help people figure out how their environment can support them better. Whether it's even just some little things, little 2% shifts you can make that actually make a difference. That data, that the math from scientific studies has actually indicated will help people not only live happier and feel they have a richer, more fulfilling life, but even increase life expectancy, statistically. And so that's, really something that is significant, And so when I came across data like that, when I was researching to write the book, I thought, okay, wait, this changes everything, There was I came across this study from Harvard called the Harvard Study of Adult Happiness that started in 1938 and is still going on to this day. So it's like 88 years.
Yeah, it's like the most popular course available or something like that, isn't it? Or at Harvard, maybe?
No, it's not a course. It's just a study that the university was running.
Oh, okay.
I don't know
there's a course now, I believe.
Is there a course?
Maybe it's Yale. Maybe it's not Harvard. Maybe it's Yale. I don't know, but yeah.
Okay, this is specifically Harvard, and it started in 1938, and they've studied thousands and thousands of individuals, and because it's 88 years, they're on to subsequent generations. All the original participants have since passed away. But what they found out is, as people move through life, so initially they did the intake. Who are you? What's your outlook on life? What's your physical health? What's your mental health? What are your goals in life? What's your history? Do you come from opportunity and security, or do you come from strife and struggle and hardship? Mm-hmm. And they basically took the whole sort of avatar of all these thousands of individuals, and then they tracked them for their whole life and periodically checked in with them and sort of went through the same process again. Okay, welcome back. Okay, how are things looking today? And so they found that throughout the ups and downs that everyone had in their own version of it, whether it was changes in their career, whether it was health challenges, whether it was business success or failure, whether they lived in a big house or whether they lived in a very humble house, some of them even with no running water, like how did that impact and affect these people? And what they found is that while all those things matter, the single biggest predictor, the thing that mattered the most in terms of people's fulfillment and happiness and their longevity, how long they lived on average, mm-hmm. was the quality of their relationships and their connections. And so, I think this makes sense intuitively. We all say, "Oh yeah, everything I do for my family or for my friends," or it's why we get up, in the morning is so that we can do for others and feel connected to our community and to our family and to our society. But having the math prove it to us allows it, because I think a lot of people are living in this place where, oh sure, I do everything for my friends and family, but there's never enough time in a day to do everything you want to do. And sometimes when people prioritize some of those activities, hanging out with your friends or spending time with loved ones, when maybe you should be you feel like you should be doing something else, it can give you a little, there can be a little inner tug of war. There might even start to feel guilty about pursuing these things. But it's like, no, the math says, you should pursue those things. So instead of having these things as, oh, I want to have more time to socialize, you can take that. That's a wish list item. But now that we have the proof from the study, you can get it off the wish list and put it on a must-have list. Mm-hmm. Right? You're allowed to justify it because we now have the math that reinforces what we already intuitively know. Mm-hmm. Hey, do this and you're gonna be happier. And statistically, you're gonna live longer. Sure, you could get hit by a bus tomorrow, but when you look at big groups of people, they're the ones that are living the longest have these good relationships. So as an architect, whose job is to create the built environment, and people are spending more than half of their lives in their homes, I think, okay, well, if relationships are the single biggest predictor of happiness, then what can I do to make sure that we have the right opportunities for relationships in the home?
Ooh, this is so good.
Yeah. What does that actually look like? To have to bake it into the mold. So it's not just kitchen, bathroom, bedroom, hangout space. But let's say make sure that we're designing intentionally for relationships. And so the Harvard study was very clear that relationships was not limited to a romantic partnership. So people that are single can still live a very long, happy life. Relationships included everything under the sun that you can imagine. Maybe you go to the farmer's market, or maybe you go to the coffee shop on Saturday mornings, and you might not even know the person's name, but you recognize their face, and maybe they know your face. Maybe they even remember how you like your coffee, and they just ask you, do you want the same thing? That's a relationship, mm-hmm. And even these little relationships all become part of the bouquet of in the garden of your life, And
oh my gosh, that's so good. The bouquet of your life. My goodness. It's so good. I mean, the bouquet of the garden of your life. I just love it's just a really good analogy.
Yeah, good. So I said, I've got to camp out here, and I have to pivot. I can't be writing green picket fence. I have to write conscious home design. And conscious home design goes back to one of my college papers that I wrote where I was saying, like this architecture, it's very thoughtful, but it's still unconscious. It's very intentional, but it's not. In fact, I'm pretty sure that if people live in that building that looks really beautiful, it's going to shorten their life expectancy. I was like, that's not conscious design, and so conscious home design came out of that, initial study. So I pivoted to that and said, I've got to camp out here on this concept of relationships. Let me learn more. And I had done a lot of personal work and research into relationships, and I read all sorts of books about heart math and attachment theory and the Gottman Institute and love languages and lots of personal development things, Mars and Venus and all sorts of stuff. But, those were mostly sort of, and Dale Carnegie, winning friends and influencing people and all, I was just interested in this kind of stuff personally. But this was an opportunity to dig a little deeper, with this thing. And the Greeks, I found out that the Greeks have 7 different words for love based on how, what kind of relationship it is, whether it's between a parent and their child, or 2 friends,
really?
Or 2 lovers, or a person in their community. And they have different names depending on the flavor, and so they've got agape and filial and storge and eros and et cetera, et cetera. And so that was interesting, but still, I wanted to go deeper, and find out more. As I researched and looked at all of the various diverse kinds of relationships that we have, for the sake of creating structure and framework so that I could, create, a methodology to make sure that we're, categorizing and including everything, I found that all of our relationships are going to fall into one of 3 sort of buckets, and those are going to be our giving relationships, our receiving relationships, and our reciprocal relationships.
Okay.
So examples of giving relationships, those are ones where we show up as the primary giver. Ones that we have with anyone that we're teaching, mentoring, or coaching. Children that we're raising or babysitting.
Right.
Even plants and animals, whether they're pets or a bird feeder outside, that is a giving relationship, that you've initiated. And so giving relationships allow us to expand ourselves a little bit more, in the sense that we're not only focused on our own well-being. We're now concerned about someone else also being uplifted or being improved.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a very selfless thing for us to do, in whatever capacity we can, right? But it's a healthy dynamic to have giving relationships. Reciprocal relationships, you and I are having one right now, Amy. This is anything where you're showing up with peers or colleagues, friends, partners, anything where people show up on their own 2 feet. There's a give and take. It's not like I have to have a role model face on like I would if I was teaching children. I don't have to, so I can sort of be a little bit, let my hair down and talk a little bit more from the heart and more casually and more, honestly in a sense. I don't have to have a facade. And so that type of casual, it could be formal, but that type of exchange has a different quality, and this also expands us in a different way. It allows us to develop a different side of ourselves than the giving relationship does. And so it's important to have, reciprocal relationships in life. And then our receiving relationships are ones where we are the primary beneficiary of someone else's, care and guidance. And those are ones that we have with our teachers or coaches or mentors, with our parents or elders and ancestors, even our heroes or spiritual figures, anyone that we're going to draw inspiration from or wisdom or guidance. Right. Anyone that's going to encourage us to be our best self. They're going to inspire us to just reach a little bit more into our potential, into our possibility. Someone that, it reminds us that someone wants the best for us. That we're not alone, that we are loved, and so that's we also need that kind of relationship. Throughout life, we're going to experience at different moments in our life. We're going to experience a different ratio of the relationships. There may be times where you've got more than one.
Right. Yeah.
But as we go through life, it's important to have a healthy balance of all 3 kinds. And what that looks like for each individual is up to them to decide. There's introverted people, extroverted people, different expectations that they have based on their personality or how they were raised or, any number of factors. But everyone needs to But by identifying the 3 categories of relationship, we can then look around the house and say, do I have opportunities? Is there, as an architect, I said, well, let's create homes that we make sure I'm building into the bones of the home opportunities for all 3 kinds, giving, receiving, and reciprocal relationships intentionally. And so then I took it one step further and I said, what would it look like? Is it even possible to create opportunities for giving, receiving, and reciprocal relationships in every room of the home? And so to really, if we could do that, that'd be really turbocharging it,
Right? Oh my gosh. I'm so curious what that looks like though. And I know it's going to differ from person to person, but like, how do you, I'm trying to picture that. And I'm just like, I don't know like what type of.
So this is where the rubber meets the road.
That's why you're the professional.
This is where theory translates into practical action steps, and this is where even someone who's living in a rental apartment, could make little shifts like this and put this to work for them. Very low effort, but high reward. This is really the low-hanging fruit, and so. Let's get into that now. Let's get into the actual things that people could could do, you know?
Awesome.
So I like to use as an example a room that people typically don't think of as intended to cultivate relationships, and that is the bathroom.
Please
Because I
let it be the
figured if I
bathroom.
can create opportunity for all three kinds of relationships in the bathroom, then it's going to be easy to do it everywhere else in the house, right?
Yeah,
and,
for
and
sure.
so, you know, because the bathroom typically is a space where that's a private space, right? It's a place where we go to be alone. It's a place where we go to take care of the body, you know, our personal needs. But it's also a place where we might go to be alone if we need to catch a break, you know, like it's Thanksgiving dinner and all the in-laws are over and
I just
someone
need a
brought
moment.
someone and this
Yeah.
person has to talk about politics. And you're like, oh my God, please give me a moment, you know. Or you're at a party and if you happen to be an introvert like I am, and it's just the buzz
Too
is a
much,
little bit
yep.
too much and I need to take a few deep breaths and center, you know, bathroom's a great rest stop. Or if you're a parent of young children and they're clinging to your leg 24 hours a day going, mommy, mommy, or daddy, daddy, give me, you know, and you just need 5 minutes by yourself, right? The bathroom is an oasis, yeah? So, you know,
Never from
there's
cats,
a
though.
number of truths around the bathroom being a private, personal space. But at the same time, it's also incredibly fertile ground for you to strengthen your sense of connection. And so let's start with the giving relationships. You know, in the bathroom, if you happen to have a window, an outside window in your bathroom, then you could very easily put a plant or two in there. You know, put it on the windowsill. If the windowsill is not big enough, put a little shelf nearby that they could sit on. You know, or
Gotcha.
hang it
Yeah.
from the top of the window. Not only does this give you an opportunity for a giving relationship, and it's very low maintenance, right? Like once a week, take 3 steps from the sink with some water, you know, give it high plant, maybe prune off a dead leaf or something, you know, give it a little water. And now you're cultivating a little bit of connection, a little bit of sense of, you know, self and other, you know, I'm part of something bigger. But also having the plants in your home has a physiological effect on us. You know, when we see green growing things, it tends to calm the mind. The breath will deepen, you know, be less shallow. Our breath will be more even and deep and regular. And our heart, you know, what they call the resting heart rate is achieved more easily when we're seeing the green growing things. And that lowers blood pressure, you know, potentially. And this is universal. You know, what they have found from studying people is that you can show people the most beautiful architecture, the most beautifully decorated room. You can show it to 1,000 people, the same beautiful space, and you won't have 1,000 people love it. They may all agree that it's beautifully designed, but some people still will be like, it's not for me though. Yes, it's beautiful, it's just not my cup of tea. But it doesn't have that physiological response. The body doesn't unconsciously, automatically, you know, instinctually have that calming effect, you know, for people looking at architecture, because our bodies didn't evolve in buildings. You know, we had millions of years of evolution in nature. So when we see green growing things, it sends cues to the physical organism of our body. You're in your natural environment.
Right.
It's safe.
That's so interesting. Yes.
So I'm all for putting plants in your home. The more the merrier. And so it's a win-win. Not only is it a giving relationship, it's also helping you lower stress potentially.
Right. Well, and so is that giving and receiving, or is that reciprocal? Like how do...
No, it's a giving relationship. So the way I classify things, so the truth is, Amy, is that every relationship you have, there's an exchange. It's just the law, right? There's no way around it. But at face value, it's a giving relationship because you're the one who's showing up first and providing something. You know, the plant would die without you. You know, the child would get malnourished without you. Like they need your care and guidance to become strong and healthy. So you are giving. Yes, you receive, but at face value, it's a giving relationship.
Okay.
So If you don't have a window in your bathroom, then put in a full spectrum light bulb. Plenty of plants can live just fine, with that kind of light. So, what if you want to take it one step further? How about putting a little fish bowl in the bathroom? And so then there's a nice colorful goldfish or one of the betta fish with the long fins. You can come in the morning and just be like, "Hi, fish," and sprinkle a little food, and now there's like a spark of life and joy in there. And your bathroom is like, it's one, instead of just being a dead utility space, it's now one step further towards becoming an oasis, a garden, and that's good for us. It lowers the stress, brings up the joy. And, the doctors say, it's very clear, high stress, short life, and so the more calm that we can bring into our lives, the better it's going to be for us. And not just, okay, so maybe you say, I don't want to live forever. Fine. But maybe you want to be more effective, and when we're calm and not feeling stress, the quality of our conversations change, and we may have better interactions with other people, whether it's a business or sales call, that goes well, and so it influences your career success and your financial power. Or maybe it's just something personal, like, hey, I didn't get into road rage, with when that person cut me off and was being a jerk in traffic, it's like, and that means something, it's like now you come home and it really, the ripple effects can be quite profound. It's like the butterfly effect. The mathematician wrote this paper, "To the flapping of a butterfly's wings in Brazil eventually set off a tornado in Texas." And he mapped it out, he proved it mathematically. Not all small things become big things, but all big things started as small things. All big things have sensitive dependence on initial conditions. And so what we want to do is intentionally set initial conditions so that they could potentially become big things. If you spend 8%, if every day is 8% more happy or 8% less stressful, what does that do to your life over years, over decades? What kind of ripple effects, what kind of big impacts are those little shifts, little 2% shifts that add up, around the home? So that's, we're working with the butterfly effect with conscious home design. So those are giving relationships in the bathroom. Okay. Now, reciprocal relationships, we see this very commonly in the master bathroom, double bowl sinks. You can be there brushing your teeth side by side with someone else. If it's your lifestyle, if you have the space and you want to do it, why not put in a tub that's a soaking tub that's big enough for two people? It's very relaxing, very romantic. It can be very enriching on multiple levels. And, what about... again, if your lifestyle, if it suits you, having a shower area that's big enough for two people with two separate shower heads. And that way it's more efficient. You don't have to take turns. You can now shower at the same time. And I'm not necessarily talking about, sexy time. It's just, morning routine. Hey, we both have to wash. And you don't even have to talk to each other. Just being together, even quietly, being near someone has shown... the results are there, that people are calmer, when they have connection like that, even unspoken connection. And so these are, again, it has to feel right for you. I'm not saying everyone should do this, but these are just examples, things to choose from. It's like a buffet. Choose your own adventure, what works for you. So these are examples of reciprocal relationships in a bathroom. Receiving relationships, take a picture of someone that loves you, or someone that inspires you, a spiritual figure even, and take that image and put it somewhere where when you're washing your face in the morning and preparing your body to be presentable for the rest of the world, you can just gaze at it for a few seconds and go, you know what? I'm not alone. I am supported. I am loved. I am being encouraged. Someone wants the best for me. And as we brush our teeth, I know how to brush my teeth. You know how to brush your teeth. We get habits. Once you learn how to do it, like while I'm brushing my teeth, I could be going through my to-do list for the day. I could be planning, I got that email yesterday. I'm remembering I now have to respond to it. It's like you can multitask. It's so easy. Nothing wrong with doing that. The body likes to economize. We become more efficient by creating habits. It frees up the mind for other
Right.
things. We don't have decision fatigue. I'm not saying you have to stop doing that, but take 5 seconds of your routine in the morning and or in the evening, and consciously look at that image and remember your connection. That's the alchemy. That's changing things. Just putting a plant and a picture of a loved one in your home probably isn't going to radically change your life. But if you do it intentionally and remind yourself of that relationship, consciously, that's the secret sauce. That's putting gas into the engine. That's what makes it really, make a difference. That's the magic. The magic
Wow.
secret sauce, they say, I guess, whatever. And so, not everyone wants to be in their bathroom and see a picture of grandma.
Well, that was my first thought. I was like,
yeah.
Not selfishly, but just like super shallow. Like, that sounds a little creepy.
Yeah. So,
but also, I got a little bit teary just thinking about that. So, I don't think that's a terrible idea.
No, so it may be too prominent. Having a picture of grandma, there in your bathroom may not feel appropriate, right? Or you may be, I'm Catholic and my partner's Jewish, and you both you can't agree to have a picture of Jesus in your bathroom, right? It's fine. Find something that does feel right, and maybe an image of any kind feels too prominent. So then look for a quote. Just print out a little bit of, or handwrite, a quote, an inspirational quote, or something from a letter that someone wrote to you, and put that up there. And it's very subtle, and then you can look at that and almost do it like an affirmation, and just for 3 to 5 seconds, go over that, and then get back to your routine. It's just, again, it's those ripple effects out, in from your life. How do you feel in your own body? How solid and confident do you feel knowing that you have that support? How do you, how more solid on your own 2 feet do you feel? And how does that change the way you show up in day-to-day life? So
I actually really like that.
Examples. And I invite everyone to just on their own do a self-assessment. Go through your house. Look, do I have opportunities for giving, receiving, and reciprocal relationships? Where are my strengths? Are there any gaps? If there are gaps, am I okay with that? Or do I want to make a shift so I could, just be more, it's up to you. Conscious home design is going to meet you wherever you are. It's not an all or nothing proposition. Wherever you are, we just do a self-assessment and then look and say, okay, here's some gaps. Of these gaps, what would feel the most potent for you to make a shift in? Start there. Do the one thing that feels the most yes to you. Yeah. So
is that like a typical, I don't know, not session is probably not the right word, but like when you're speaking with someone, there are questions that you ask to get a feel for the essence of a person. Is that one of the, like if you were to, because like I was saying, like when you talked about putting an image of a person that loves you or whatever in there, I was like, ooh, that's a little bit creepy. But the quote, the saying thing like that, I just thinking about that, I got like a little bit teary. Because that sounds really powerful for me. And, clearly it would be different for other people. But so is that something like, how would you feel about doing something like this? Would this, make you feel comfortable? Would this not make, is there something that would maybe be different for you, like plants or fish or, is that like one of the questions that you ask?
Yeah. So,
Ish.
Again, the quality of the questions determine the quality of your outcomes. So the Conscious Home Design book, Mark Twain said he was writing a letter to a friend and he wrote to his friend, I would have wrote you a shorter letter, but I didn't have the time. Meaning it takes a lot of time to be succinct and to edit down. I hired 2 editors actually 3 editors in the process of writing my book. And I did the work and I got it down to a message that anyone can read in about an hour. It's a very short, easy to read, but The real nuggets are there and accessible. There's not a lot of talk. It's not jargon. It's just someone could read it. They don't know the difference between one wall and the next, and they can still get value out of this. But that's just sort of the big idea, and it's the why. In terms of actually applying it, the how, that's about asking the quality questions. And so I worked with, and I'm an architect. I have to understand the limits of my professional competency and capacity. I'm not a therapist, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a doctor. I want those fields, experts in those fields, to help me. I want to be informed by those, because architecture in its highest calling is about helping people live happily ever after, living their best life. And we need experts in those fields of knowledge to help us do that. So I don't want to be an architect designing in a bubble where all I know is design and style and architecture and structure. That's dead.
Right.
That's unconscious.
Yep.
It may be very intentional, but it's still dead. It needs to have real connection with human experience.
Yeah.
And so I hired someone who has a dual master's degree in psychotherapy. They actively work as a therapist and a psychologist, and social work, and had done years of social structure and policy at a governmental level. And read the book, and then together we said, hey, I want people to get the best. Let's make sure we're asking them the right questions so that we leave no stone unturned. Because Amy, if anyone comes to me and they say, I want to make a change to my home, everyone has their list. They have their wish list. I want this and this and this, and I tried this in the past and it didn't work, so I don't want that. Everyone knows what they want and a few things of what they don't want. But like I mentioned before, the 10,000 hours sort of rule, like people haven't spent 10,000 hours studying floor plans and thinking about designs and flows.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and you were saying, what do you want to have? And I, when I'm thinking of that, I'm like, okay, well, like you were saying before, like bathroom, bedroom, hangout room, but like, that's not very personal. It's not.
That's functional.
Yes, that's the word.
Yeah.
So there's more than that.
There is. And so together we wrote the companion workbook to go with the book. And so this is, we do the core values. Hey, what's valuable to you? What's important to you? One person might say, I want fun, freedom, and family. Another person might say, I want security, justice, and integrity. These are different core values for different people. And that is going to inform potentially the shape of their home and the way they allocate space. Some things get a higher priority for this person than this other person in the way the elements of creation in their home. Yeah,
because none of those things work for me that you just said.
Sure. Right. So, I mean, if one person has a high priority fun, and another person, and a different person has a very high priority security, those are two different forms that those show up, in the built environment.
Right.
A house that looks like fun, I mean, take your pick. It could be all sorts of things. That could be
circus characters,
big party rooms. Sure.
Right.
It could be bright colors.
Pinball.
It could be a fire pole from the second floor down. I mean, any number of things could be fun, right?
Right.
Security is going to have different things. It's going to have a big formal structure. It's going to feel solid like a fortress. It's going to, have stability. It's going to be very orthogonal and solid feeling. I mean, it's just very different. Yeah. So we do the core value. I ask people, what are your core values? I don't tell them what your values are. I don't know. You got to tell me. We also do the relationship exercise. Hey, here's the 3 types of relationship. Here are examples that fit in each of those categories. What kind of relationships are you rich with right now? Identify your top giving relationships right now that you have in your life. Identify your top reciprocal relationships right now in your life. Identify your top receiving relationships. Now, once you've identified what you have, are you okay with that, or are there gaps? And you can then say, oh, actually, I'm doing really good on this and this, but I see an opportunity. I wish I had a little bit more of this in my life. Okay, great. What can we do to build opportunity for that into your life, into your home? And so, and that's continuing on through, every room in the house, going through Maslow's hierarchy of human needs. Like, hey, what do you like to do for personal growth? Self-development. How do you improve yourself? What does that look like for you? How do you do creative expression? One person says, well, I like to play the cello. Another person says, I like to do creative writing. Another person says, well, I like to build little toy models. Whatever it is. And creative expression could be for others. Oh, I bake beautiful cakes and I share them with other people. It might even have, a marketplace thing. You might actually get money for doing it. It's still a creative thing. But it also might just be a hobby just for yourself. No one else in the world. No one else is reading my journal. This is just for me. But it's still a creative activity. So however creativity shows up for you, I just ask, what do you like to do for creative activity? And if you can't think of anything, then I just say, well, think back to your childhood. What did you like to do when you were a kid that was creative? Maybe it didn't get nurtured. Maybe you didn't stay with it. Maybe no one recognized it and they didn't encourage it in you. And so it sort of fell off. But it doesn't mean the seed isn't planted and you couldn't start to cultivate it now. Now, that's one way. You can look to your past for the clues and you can rekindle that creative spark by fanning it and giving it some fuel. But you also don't even have to do that. You could just say, forget it. What would you like to do? The world is full of things. What's something, I've always wanted to do needlepoint. I've always wanted to learn how to crochet. I've always wanted to do podcasting.
Right.
Whatever it is, just make it up.
Right.
You don't have to make a big commitment to it. Just try it out. Life is a buffet. Try something else. So the workbook, the exercises are about, all the different your basic needs, but also your higher needs, and walking through them one by one, leaving no stone unturned. Because when you do the Conscious Home Design workbook, you start with your list at the beginning, but by the time you're done with the workbook, you're like, oh my God, here's my new list, and it's better than I imagined. It's I never would have thought of
Like
these.
You can see it and you're so excited, I'm sure. You're like, that I can have that? Like that sounds so perfect.
Right.
Wow.
Because the fundamental belief that I carry that's behind the work I do, behind Conscious Home Design, is I believe that happy people are better neighbors. And so, happy people are better citizens. They're when I go outside and I want to talk with my neighbor, do I want to talk to them if they're all grumpy and life isn't working for them? Not so much. But if they're happy and joyful because they feel like they're able to achieve the things that are important to them, that they do have, access to activities that are important to them, then they feel like life is full of possibility and potential. That's a very hopeful point of reference.
My gosh,
you feel
that's such a good point.
I love, yeah. So that's the whole thing. It's like, sure, I can't change the whole world, but I've been hired to change this one person's or this one family's, home.
Right.
And if they're living their best life, then that sends ripples out, and everyone that they come into contact with is going to feel that and be uplifted in turn,
Right.
And so it's like, think globally, act locally, right? World peace, let it begin with me. Yeah. So that's the whole, that's the deeper sort of, understanding. It's deeper than that too, but that's, that really is the philosophy behind.
That's like a toe dip in, I'm sure.
What's that?
That's like a toe dip in, like, just like a taste of what it's like, I'm sure. And I mean, like you said earlier,
onions, so that we're not at the core, the deepest philosophy behind it, but that is getting, one step beyond, it's really the why. When we understand the why, then we can say, oh, this really is, we're not just talking about vague theory. We understand that this actually is true. And therefore, again, it's like taking things off of our wish list and putting them on the must-have list. It allows us to prioritize.
Oh my
things.
gosh, that's so good. And like you said earlier, happy people live longer. Like it just
Statistically.
that the ripple effect, like you were saying also.
Yeah.
This is so fascinating. And I think it's really interesting that you're an architect, but you're also like, you're so fascinated by the human element of it, like, relationships and what, I just feel like it's such a deep conversation, deeper than, what you would typically think of an architect as. You just have this depth to you that it's not just about, the building. It's about every single room and how it makes you feel, and not just like what's pretty.
Yeah. Well, for me, architecture, it's a service profession. It's I know there's some people that I don't want to talk bad about other about the profession or other architects, but there are people they're stylists, and they're like, this is what I do, take it or leave it, swipe left or swipe right.
Right.
They present you their
This
style.
this trend.
And I don't do that. You go to my website, there's no photos. There's just photos. There's photos of a bunch of different styles. Beach house or bungalow or ski chalet or Victorian style.
Right.
It's like you can have any of those. We can get you the style you want. That's the easy part.
Yeah.
But why are you going to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, possibly multiple six figures, even seven figures, or multiple seven figures in some cases, and go through 2 years of a construction project only to move in and
have this perfect house that you feel nothing about.
House that doesn't fit. Doesn't fit you.
Right.
Or it's just like, why would you do that to yourself? Because people don't know better. They don't know that they're allowed to ask the questions that they're asked in the conscious home design methodology.
Right.
And so I'm just, for me, architecture is not about buildings. It's about people. The building is just the medium. It's it's not the subject. It's the verb.
Yes.
Something, right? People are the subject. And so, when people are, I found that I was frustrated as a young architect going through college and going through my internship, because the thing is architecture is an apprentice profession. It's very serious. It's very far reaching. Architects are a very dedicated bunch. We have to do 5 years, 5 to 7 years of college, and then minimum 3 to 5 years of apprenticeship. You have to log in 5,000 hours working under someone else.
That's half of mastery, though, right?
To sit for the exam to get licensed. And so theoretically you could do it in 5,000 hours, which is actually only 2.5 years. Full-time work. 2,000 hours. 40 hours a week for a year. But it's so broad, the categories that you have to have experience in to add up to those 5,000, that no real life job actually will give you the full diversity within 5,000 hours of work. Some architects they're actually an apprentice for 10 years, right? They put in 20,000 hours of real world experience before they log in the minimum 5,000 hours that are required to sit for the exams. That's on top of school. And then the exams are, they keep simplifying and streamlining. When I did it, there was I think there was 9 exams, individual examinations, 550 multiple choice questions, 11 graphical exams. Each exam took somewhere between 3 and 6 hours long, and there was that many of them. It took me 6 months. I had to study and do 1 or 2. Every 3 weeks I was taking another exam, and I've studied practically, for almost, 20 hours a week for 3 weeks just to prepare for each section on top of all of practice, right? So there's a lot there. It's not an easy path. It's a lot harder than being a lawyer, in terms of the breadth of knowledge, it's maybe not as difficult as being a doctor. You know, it's a step below doctor in terms of the rigor and the intensity of it, but it's a lot harder than a lawyer. But all three of these professions are licensed, practices. You know, we practice medicine, we practice architecture, we practice law. You're never done. You never know it all. It's there's always more.
Yeah.
But for me, it was always about the people. And when I saw people that were just other architecture students or even architects that are just so focused on the building, hey, this is my art, this is what I do, and you get to fit yourself into it. Aren't you so lucky to be able to get into this building?
Right.
You know, I understand that, but for me, it's not personal enough. You know, I don't want people to have to shoehorn themselves into a space just because it looks so wow.
Perfect. Yeah. Yep.
I want people to, if they want a wow factor, that we can give them a wow factor. Some people don't want wow. They just want to look like everyone else. They want to blend right in. They want to feel like they fit right in with the community. They want normal. So depending on what you want, you know, we're going to give that to you. Mm-hmm. But first, we're going to make sure that whatever we give to you, whether it's wow or blend in, is going to serve. It's going to serve you very, very well. Not just today, but it's going to allow you to grow and adapt and evolve in years to come. You know, we're planning, we understand who you are today, but there's always that eye to the future. You know, you don't want to just have a perfect snapshot in time. It's a perfect crystal. It's a perfect snowflake, and it's no longer going to fit tomorrow.
Right.
That's not what...
It's a perfect Instagram reel, as opposed to like where you want to be sitting, 24/7.
Right. It has to be somewhat adaptable and flexible. It has to allow you to become different, And so, look, you're never going to not have a need for creative expression, but what you do for creative activity may evolve. It may change, and so that's okay, And so, maybe your space gets repurposed, Maybe it was an art studio, but now it's a podcast and creative writing and journaling den.
Right.
It's just totally different. Who cares? It doesn't matter. Just do something, that feels fun or good.
Fuels you, right. Yeah.
Yeah, that fuels you. That's it.
I love so much, Taylor, that you have this... just your personality where you were like, I went to school, I did all this schooling, I did these exams for being an architect, but I just felt like something was missing. Like, I just feel like that's the type of person that I look for, but I don't know that I'm looking for that. Like, it's not something that, I don't know. I've always had this thing, if somebody said to me, Amy, if someone offered to build you the perfect house, like, what would you do? Like, what style? Victorian or ranch or whatever? I'm like, it's like, I get that, like, analysis paralysis, like decision fatigue. That's what it is. I'm just like, I have no idea. Like, I don't even know what I would do. But the way that you're looking at it is, it feels more permanent. It feels more, just personal. And that's how it really should be. I mean, that's how I feel it should be. Like, it's something that, it's where you spend the bulk of your time. You do, your favorite things are there. That's where you're growing. That's where you're making stuff happen. So you want it to encourage that, right?
To my way of thinking, it's a more authentic way of practicing architecture. When you're young, and I want to say sort of immature, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but like, again, we're talking about the way we communicate at different decades. When you're 22 years old, like if you ask 25-year-old Taylor, hey, what's the trajectory of your career going to look like? And I always knew I was going to write a book, and I was like, well, I'm going to be licensed by this time. I'm going to have my book by this time. I'm going to have my own practice by this time. It's like I had the milestones and marked on the calendar. Life didn't actually turn out that way, right? And it rarely does it for anyone. You just have to, you can set your goals, but you really have to adapt and surf and go with the flow, because
like sea
life
legs
is bigger than us, right?
Yes.
We have to respond. Yeah. There's a certain amount of knowing when to overcome and a certain amount of knowing when to bend and bow and get out of the way. Yeah.
Right.
So, when you're, young, when you're 25 years old, you may be like, oh, I love the Tudor style, or no, I love the postmodern style. Like, people can get very passionate and say, and I saw this with many of my fellow students, they were just, they loved a certain style. They were really into it, and it's like, youth is fanatical, like, I'm going to be vegan. I'm going to be hardcore carnivore. It's like, it's so all or nothing for young people. It's a very immature way of looking at the world. Not that it's bad. You need that sort of enthusiasm to get through all of the crazy things that would otherwise stop you.
Well, to experience life, to try new things. Yeah.
But so for me, by asking the deep questions about who you are and what's going to actually serve you, that to me feels like a more authentic or more mature way to look at it. So you could come to me and say, no, Taylor, I'm absolutely clear. I want it to look like a Tudor. Fine. We're going to get you the Tudor, but let's first make sure that we've got the spaces that are going to support you in being who you are.
Right.
But if you came to me and said, actually, I don't know what it's supposed to look like, maybe I don't really care. It's like, okay, great. So what's going on? So then we can take our cues from the neighborhood. What are other people doing? Do you want to blend in, or do you want to stand out? Do you want everyone to be jealous of you and be envious and be like, wow, do you want to be the coolest house on the block, or do you want to just fit right in so everyone's just like, hey, one of us? What kind of social experience are you trying to cultivate? Again, even within those two different scenarios, we're still focusing on serving you as a person, but then how that looks on the outside, that's going to depend again on the way you want to interact with people around. And if you don't have any of those clues or cues to go with, like you've got 1,000 acres in the middle of nowhere and you can do anything you want, nobody cares, we're still going to focus on you and who you are. What are your core values? What are your relationships that you want to cultivate? How does creative activity and personal development and physical activities and cooking, are you cooking 3 times a day or once a day? Is it quick meals or is it a big from scratch? Like, what does your routine look like? On what days of the week are you doing what? It's like we can create the space to support those types of goals. So we start there, and sometimes just from there doing that and setting up the size appropriate rooms and proper adjacencies. You don't want the kitchen next to the bedroom, because the smell's going through, or making blenders and smoothies in the morning and someone else is sleeping in. It's just disruptive, So some spaces want to be connected, some space so they have interaction, others want to be isolated so they have separation. So once we've come up with size appropriate spaces and all the right spaces that are required for the way that you want to live, and then we arrange them, that starts to inform the shape and the massing and the overall structure. And so it starts to, grow from the inside out. And so you don't have to worry about what it's going to look like. That will come automatically. Form follows function. Start with the function, and then the form grows organically out of that. So, there's 2 ways. One is to just focus on the function, let it grow and evolve. The other is it has to be this form or this style, and then you create that in a way that you can fit all the other puzzle pieces that you want in your life within that container. So it's there's an outside in approach and an inside out approach, and both work.
Right. Oof. Wow. I keep thinking of having someone build you this perfect home that is like, it's shiny and it's just and perfect and whatever, and then having. I'm thinking of myself, obviously. Sure. Like I don't necessarily want this like shiny perfect home. I want somewhere that I walk in and I can just like exhale and feel like home, like this is where I belong. Not like this is Instagram perfect. It's so, everything is so shiny and it's exactly what I want. But like, just that, like, I'm looking for that exhale. Like this is it.
That's well said.
And so I feel like I could do this for a long time with you, because I want to go through all the different questions. We can all do that in the book. We can all, work through that on our own and and ask Talor questions, right?
Yeah, so you can go, I mean, the book, the Conscious Home Design book, the proper book, you can order it through any local bookstore. You just go there and say, I want to order the Conscious Home Design book by Talor Stewart. They can order a hard copy in your hand. You can also go to your favorite online retailer, Barnes & Noble or Amazon, and pick up a copy, digital or hardcover. They'll mail it to you. But on my website, that's the only place where you can get the workbook. And right now, I have a bundle put together where it's the book, the audio book, and the workbook for $47, instant digital download. For a little bit more money, you can order the hard copies, and I'll autograph them and mail them to you. And when you do that, you also get the instant digital download, so you can dive in right away without having to wait for it to come in the mail. That's at conscioushomedesign.com. If anyone's interested, they can do that for themselves. It's sort of a DIY kind of thing, and then if they want, they can schedule a consultation with me, and they can pick my brain, and they can send me the results of their workbook, and I can give them feedback on it, and they can say, yes, I'm thinking about doing this and this and that, and I can give them oh, that's a great idea. If you try it like this, it'll save you some lost time, or save you some money, or you'll get better results, or whatever. I can give them a little bit of guidance and steering with the consultation.
Ooh,
and of course,
that's really
if
fun.
someone wants to do a major renovation or build a new home, there's a contact me form. But buying the book is a first step. Do the workbook, do the exercises. Take a Saturday afternoon or a Sunday afternoon and just go through that and have some fun. You don't have to do it all.
Send in your answers,
but you'll get some. And do it with everyone you live with, not just one person. It's like, I love it even when people make their kids do it with their kids. Even a 6-year-old kid can do it with their parent, and they can do some of the questions together, and it can be very bonding. It's a very good experience. If you're building a new home and you live in a family situation, but only one person is really driving the project, then what happens is that home ends up looking like what that person wants, and maybe the other people don't
feel
want that.
Yeah.
And so if you're trying to create, I think everyone's bedroom, they can do that the way they want. It's their own private space. But if you have a family room that only one person likes and everyone else hates that style, mm-hmm. then it's defeated the purpose, because the underlying goal of the family room is to have quality time and connection with the people you live with. And so everyone needs to feel comfortable in that space. So going through the workbook together as a group, or as a partnership, or as a family, or whatever your living situation is, mm-hmm. can go a long way to creating relationship harmony, and building harmony into the home. And everyone feels, people are so much happier when they feel heard, when they feel understood, when they feel like someone else cares about what they think or feel, and that's key for relationships. And so I see people build new homes and go through things, and I see when they're not guided with someone sensitive, if it's just design focused but not human focused. I've seen construction projects tear people apart. People have led to divorce. People have ended up selling houses. In fact, I know someone who bought it was more than they bought a 7-figure home, brand new, because in the process of building it, the couple had a divorce. It drove them mad, and they hated each other, and they had to sell the house and divorce. And so these people were able to come in and get a really nice brand new home, And so if it's guided sensitively, if you go through this process, instead of tearing people apart, it bonds them together. It's a relationship cultivating. You're building your future together. Right. That's what it's supposed to be.
Literally and figuratively.
Exactly.
Building a future.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Wow. Okay, so conscioushomedesign.com is the website where we can find the book and the workbook and and consultation and scheduling a meeting with you. What does the word sustainability mean to you, Talor?
Sustainability, so many different layers or levels or places for sustainability.
That's why I've asked it 170 something times, because everyone has a different view.
Right. True sustainability. So I'm going to use the word believe, but it's more of a knowing for me. But I believe that everything that we see out in the world is the physical manifestation of an energetic blueprint. That everything that is created, there's an energy or a concept, a mathematical signature behind it. For everything that's physical, there's a metaphysical foundation. And I believe that blueprint, the blueprint behind life, you could say DNA is a blueprint, but even DNA is physical, but behind the physical part of DNA, there's some sort of law or structure or intention. There's a concept before it becomes physical, and then that hint of physicality informs the gross, the observable, physicality. So I believe that the underlying blueprint behind all creation is intelligent. I believe that the universe is self-aware. I believe that the universe is not only aware, but I believe it is loving. I believe that the consciousness is loving. If that's just the best word for it. I know that the world seems chaotic, the universe seems chaotic and random, but everything is operating on the law of cause and effect. And it's just that our brain is not a powerful enough computer to calculate all the trillions of cause-effect things that are in motion already. We can grok some of the cause-effect things that happen to us. We can calculate some of it, but not all of it. It's just too much.
Sure.
And so the chaos, the seeming chaos of the world, is just us not being able to see to all ends. Yeah. But it doesn't mean that there's not organization and structure behind it, And so the laws of math, the laws of electricity, the laws of gravity that physicists can calculate and measure and work with, that's not a system of justice. That's a system of structure, an order upon which everything is built. So there is a very impersonal aspect to creation. But there's also at the same time a very personal and loving aspect of that actually is aware of each one of us as an individual, each one of our unique. No two of us humans are alike. You can find someone that looks like you, maybe even sounds like you, has same interests in you, but is not identical to you. No one's identical. Everyone is unique. And every unique spark is all... It's like I used a bouquet before. Each person is a flower, but all those stems go back to the same. They all grew out of the same earth, And so that loving intelligence behind everything is the source from which all of us unique beings grow out of. And so, to me, sustainability is being consciously aware of and connected to that source.
Wow.
Everything else is temporary. The only true sustainability is the source, is the underlying source of all things. And so that's what sustainability means to me. Yeah.
That's really
I know it's
deep.
pretty philosophical.
That was very philosophical.
Or-
But I think that, I think the garden analogy works really well. The one constant is that we belong to the earth, to this garden, and then the stems may change, the flowers may change depending on the season, whatever, but we just have to remember that we belong where we remember where we came from and realize that we're part of it. And it's been said,
Sure.
not
Sure.
not in the same way, of course, but we we are nature. We're all part of it, and so we need to remember that and remember that connection. And
That's true. So if I'm talking about myself as a body, as a physical organism, then that's a type of sustainability that we're talking about, the earth. And yes, we all come from the earth, ashes to ashes, dust to dust, right? We're all stardust. Carl Sagan, proved it, right?
or Crosby, Stills and Nash, yeah.
They said it, yeah, right. They did in one of their songs, yeah. But they didn't just. That's not poetic. That's true, right?
Right.
The very atoms that assemble our body were born in a star, right? It's very cosmic. So that's the physical. But who I am is unique. The spark that animates my body was sparking before my body grew. And after the body disintegrates, that spark is still sparking somehow, that. And so that's a sort of that's what I'm talking about, the behind the physical.
Mm-hmm.
I throw my compost, into the compost pile rather than into the trash, because to me that's sustainable, that's physically sustainable, earthly sustainable. Right. Like I said before, happy people are better neighbors, I believe that if you're aware of that underlying sustainability, it's going to help you be aware of the physical sustainability too. You can't tap into that and then ignore or not be sympathetic to or in harmony with the one. Well, I gave you as deep as I could go behind the scenes. It's the blueprint. Because I think of like an architect. Before it's a house, it's a blueprint. It's an idea. It's a concept. Mm-hmm. And so I see the whole universe as that. Before it's a planet and a sun and a cosmos, there's an idea of that behind it. There's a structure and an order to it. Because if there wasn't, we wouldn't have planets and galaxies and solar systems and all of those stuff. It would just be a whole bunch of chaotic dust. Nothing would organize itself at all without an intentional blueprint behind it. So that's what I'm trying to. I try to tie the things that I do into that. For me, it's like scientific first principles. The average person can't go more than 7 weeks without food, 7 days without water, and 7 minutes without air. That's just physically scientific first principles. And so in the home, I'm like, well, we got to prioritize air quality.
Right.
We got to prioritize people staying hydrated. The American Medical Association estimates 75% of Americans are chronically dehydrated, not just occasionally, just chronically dehydrated. That's going to shorten life expectancy. Organs don't do well without water. Without the water to be able to flush toxins and bring nutrients. What can I do, sustainably in your life, just to sustain the organism? So much of this talk has been about people's personalities and they're developing their potential, but just physically, like giving people good air quality and good water to drink so they stay hydrated, those things are really going to make a difference as well, right? It's not sustainability it works on all levels. It works on the intellectual level, the emotional level, the spiritual level, the physical level. So
yeah, totally.
That's I see it almost, sustainability is like it's all building on this pillar, and it's like the spine, the backbone, and then all these ribs are the different layers of it,
Right. Well, in your blueprint for sure. Yeah. I mean, and that's why I ask everyone, because, there are people that are like, and this is one of mine, is just like less plastic, or like add less to the landfill. And that's a very, simplistic, but and everyone has their own thing. And you've clearly spent a lot of time working through this, and really putting thought to that. So you have a very big, understanding of it, I guess, because it's pretty much everything that you do.
I'm a systems thinker. I think in terms of processes and, experiences. When a person comes to their house, what do they see first? When they walk through the front door, what do they need to do? Do they have keys they have to put down? Do they have bags of groceries? Do they have boots and coats they have to take off? Where are those things going to go? And once they do that and everything is contained well and organized and put away, so you don't have clutter and chaos at your front door, what comes next? What's the next? And so it's a procession, So I think about that. For me, I want everything. It's an ecosystem. The whole home can serve you well if we think about it clearly. Again, it was like I said, leaving no stone unturned. Yes, you've got your list, but after you tell me your list, let me ask the questions to make sure there's no gaps. That maybe there's something you forgot to ask.
Mm-hmm.
And so, anyway, that's what sustainable means to me.
That's awesome. I mean, so much about what you do, Talor, it like causes you to think. Like, conscious home design, it has, you have a meaning for it, but then, like I was saying, like even just saying it, I was like, what does that mean? What would my first thought be? And I'm sure a lot of people do that, but it makes you actually think about your home, and not just like in an architecture way, like a shell of a place that you sleep in. But like, conscious home design is so much bigger.
Socrates said the unexamined life is not worth living.
Right.
And so Socrates was a philosopher, who was a very deep thinker. I really enjoyed reading some of his books, or books of Plato writing about what Socrates said. I'm not telling people what to believe. I just think systematically and process-wise, and looking at things that science, the data tells us matter, and just asking those questions. So I say, do you have a spiritual practice? If you don't, okay, fine. Like when I ask people what they do for personal development, some people say, I have a prayer and meditation practice that I do. Some people, like my grandfather, who was not religious, he had his study, where he would read books, and he was very, very well read, and he would write papers. So it was more an intellectual development rather than a spiritual development. But that's personal development, right? So I'm not here to say, hey, you have to have a prayer room. Maybe you don't. That's not who you are. I don't care. My job is to help you get what you need, what you want, not to tell you what you need. Right?
Yeah.
So so I give you my personal sort of philosophy. It's because I just want to I just want everything I do to be as deeply rooted and in alignment and coherent and consistent as possible, because that's what stands the test of time. That's what proves solidity and stability. And when you have that benchmark, then every decision you make, you can reference it back and say, is it in keeping? Does this make sense with what our stated goals are? And so it creates the yardstick that you can measure all of your choices against. So that's why I do what I do. But people aren't supposed to know everything that I know about architecture and the approach and the way we do it. You just need to know that I'm aware of these things. I don't want, if you've got decision fatigue, don't do brain sweat on it. Just know that I know those things, and I'll keep it
Right.
easy. This process is supposed to be fun. You're not supposed to overthink it. Overthinking it is my job. You're, I just want to ask you a few of the good questions, and you can go, oh yeah, okay, great. So it's a creative process, a creative, joyful, thoughtful, but fun experience for you. And then I take those, and then I work on how can I make this real? How can I make it work with the limitations of zoning, of gravity, of the weather, and budget, like all the limitations and all the things that we're working within. How can I take that wish list and translate it into something that's actually possible?
Yeah.
So
I just think
that's
that,
my job.
yeah, I love that everything that you're about it inspires you to think about you and what works for you. Encourages. That's a great one. That's way better than what I had. But there are so many things in the sustainability realm that are like, make this or buy this or, do this. And so much of what you do is like inward. And I think that's really important. And I think that it ultimately, it has a very sustainable, my words are failing me, but like a sustainable way about it, because it will last, because it's
Abraham Maslow, the psychologist, he showed this to us. This has been proven over and over and over again. If your basic needs aren't met, like if you're starving to death, if you're homeless and starving, you really do not care if the sandwich someone's giving you is organic or not. You really do not care if the shelter you're staying in was harvest with forest certified, trees, right? You may care, but not really. It's low on your priority list, right? Right now, you just need food and shelter. Once you can give people stability, they're not worried about their survival.
Mm-hmm.
And then you start asking them, what do you do for happiness? What do you do for personal development? What's the best version of you look like? And you get to say, I want this and that. And life starts to seem possible for you. Now that person has capacity to start thinking sustainably. Well, am I treading lightly? Are the choices I'm making ruining someone else's day, ruining the environment, or leaving? Am I being a good person or not? Right? And so that's conscious home design is the idea of like, hey, when we all have to have these houses. And we're building houses all over the place, millions of houses, a couple million houses every year get built. But if they're just bedroom, bathroom, and hangout space and kitchen, then we're not giving people the opportunity to live a higher self. And so they're going to be inherently less concerned about environmental things or sustainability things because they're not fulfilled.
Mm-hmm.
We could Conscious home doesn't say you need more space. It's just the way you allocate space. If you're going to build a 2,000 square foot home, fine. Just make sure it has spaces for all of our needs, our diverse needs. If you're going to build a 1,200 square foot home, fine. Just make sure it has space for all of our needs. If it's going to be a 5,000 square foot home or a 10,000 square foot mansion, fine. Make sure it's well laid out and has space for all of your needs so that you actually feel like this is great, that I'm living, my destiny, the choice, because people can live in a home that has all these nice things and still feel completely empty inside. Like life is meaningless and they have no purpose and there's no value and they're just trying to stuff themselves full of exciting activities and fancy things that you can buy and all sorts of, material things, but they're not. Because people haven't asked them the question, what do you like to do for creative expression? What do you like to do for personal development? How do you show up as the next best version of yourself? People aren't asking them those meaningful questions that allow them to stop and go, oh, okay, here's who I really am. Here's my authentic me.
Right. Yeah.
So
I've got to go write some stuff down because I need to, I've had some ideas for my next place.
Yeah, good. So that's the message that I want to leave with everyone today is like, the one takeaway from this whole conversation is start with your relationships, because that's what the data says helps us be happy. And again, happy people I think are better neighbors and better citizens and more sustainable. So look at your opportunities for giving, receiving, and reciprocal relationships, and start there. And if you want to go deeper, then you can look at Maslow's, and it's all in the workbook, and people can call me if they want. But that's the real takeaway.
Okay, very cool. ConsciousHomeDesign.com, guys. Thank you so much, Taylor. This has been amazing. Sure. I always love when someone makes me think.
You're welcome. Yeah. Well, I think about these things, because it's my dharma. This is my life path. So I think about these things really so that you don't have to. I want people to think a little bit about it, but no one's going to spend the tens of thousands of hours thinking about it that I have, because it's not their job. Everyone follows their own path, so and that's why we hire experts. When I need expert help, because it shortcuts our success, right? If I try to be my own doctor, that's dangerous. I need a doctor that's going to help me, get better results faster.
Right. Well, you
right?
spent your 10,000 hours in architecture, and someone else has spent 10,000 hours in medical school. So
that's right.
You should rely on them for that. I don't have to know
what the doctor knows.
Exactly.
I just have to know the doctor knows what they're supposed to.
Please let the doctor know what they're supposed to know. Right. Yes. Very good. All right. Well, thank you so much. I've loved this a ton. So it's so enlightening and just so exciting to start to get clarity on what we really want. What would make us grow, what would make us feel. But that exhale, oh my gosh, I'm home. This is where I belong. We should all have that. Let us all have that. So go through the workbook, you guys, buy the book, and check in with Taylor if you want to consult, if you need some extra help.
If you want to pick my brain and have a private consultation, absolutely.
You'll have a deep conversation.
That for you, Amy. I want that for everyone. I want everyone to feel like they have that home that they can have a true exhale in, and it feels like home.
Oh gosh, I'm so excited just thinking about it now.
Great.
Awesome.
Thanks for having me as a guest.
Thank you.